All right, today we're going to get into something really special. It's one of the most mind-bending, profound creations to ever come out of mathematics. And yeah, it looks like a game, but trust me, it is so much more than that. This is Conway's Game of Life.
But right off the bat, here's the first weird thing you need to know about it. It's a game with no players. Seriously, you just set it up, hit go, and it plays itself. And once you step back, something incredible starts to happen. Out of this simple, hands-off setup, a whole universe of seemingly infinite, totally unpredictable complexity just emerges. And here's the kicker, the part that'll really blow your mind. All of it, all that complexity, all that beautiful, unpredictable chaos is born from just 3 simple rules. So let's go back to the beginning. The year is 1970, and a brilliant British mathematician named John Conway comes up with this idea he calls a no-player game. Now, this wasn't about making the next big video game, not at all. It was more of an experiment, a simulation, really. He was asking a huge question. Could you get complex, lifelike behavior to bubble up from the simplest possible starting point? And this quote from Conway himself really gets to the heart of what he was after. He wasn't trying to engineer some complicated system. He was doing the opposite. He was searching for rules so basic, so simple, that you couldn't predict what would happen next. He had this hunch that if he could achieve that, well, that unpredictability would mean the system was universal, that it could be capable of, well, anything.
Okay, so what is the simple engine that drives everything? Well, picture a giant grid, kind of like a checkerboard. Every little square or cell can either be alive or dead, on or off. And what happens to each cell in the next moment, the next generation, is decided by just 3 ridiculously simple rules.
All right, let's break it down. It's super simple. Rule 1 is about birth. An empty, dead cell will suddenly spring to life if, and only if, it has exactly 3 live neighbors. Not 2, not 4, 3. Then you've got survival. If a cell is already alive, it gets to stay alive in the next turn as long as it has 2 or 3 neighbors. It's kind of like its social sweet spot. And finally, death. This happens in 2 ways. If a live cell has fewer than 2 neighbors, it dies from, isolation. And if it has more than 3, it dies from overcrowding. And that's it. Birth, survival, and death. That is the entire rulebook for this whole universe. Now, here's where the magic really starts. When you let these rules run, generation after generation, something incredible happens. What starts as just a random mess of on and off cells, it begins to organize itself. Out of the chaos, these specific, stable, and repeating patterns start to emerge, and they basically fall into a few main categories. First up, you get what are called still lives. These are the simplest patterns. They're these little arrangements of cells that have hit a perfect state of balance. Think of patterns like the block or the beehive. Every cell is happy, no new cells can be born, nothing is overcrowded, they just sit there, perfectly stable, forever. Okay, moving up in complexity, we get oscillators. Now these guys are dynamic, they're alive. They change from one moment to the next, but they do it in a perfect repeating loop. The classic example is the blinker, which just flips back and forth between being a vertical line and a horizontal one. It's like a little flashing light on the grid. It's definitely alive, but it's not actually going anywhere.
And then we get to the really exciting stuff, spaceships. Now, just like an oscillator, a spaceship is a pattern that repeats in a cycle. But, and this is the huge difference, when a spaceship finishes its cycle, the whole pattern has also moved across the grid. It actually travels. And you have to understand, the discovery of the very first spaceship was a monumental moment. It's the most famous one of all. It's called the glider. And the second Conway and his team saw it, they knew they'd stumbled onto something way bigger than they ever imagined. So you might be thinking, okay, what's the big deal? It's just a bunch of pixels moving across a screen, right? But here's the profound part. The actual cells on the grid, they aren't moving. They're just blinking on and off. It's the pattern that's moving. It's like a whole new layer of reality has just popped into existence. A particle made of pure information, born from those simple rules. And you can just feel the excitement of that discovery in this quote from Conway's colleague, Richard Guy. Apparently, he was watching this little cluster of cells that had kind of drifted off from the main chaos on the screen, and he just shouts, "Come over here, my bit's walking." That was it. That was the eureka moment. The realization that this wasn't just a static or blinking world, it was a world where things could actually travel. It's a cool little detail that Conway himself later said he kind of wished he hadn't called it the glider. He thought the ant would have been better.
And if you watch one, you can totally see why. It really does look like a tiny little creature just determinedly walking across the screen. And this is where it all comes together. Because once you can send a stable packet of information, a glider, from one place to another, well, that ability unlocked the game's biggest secret. This whole thing wasn't just a cool simulation, it was actually a computer. The huge breakthrough came from a programmer named Bill Gosper. He discovered this pattern you see here, the Gosper glider gun. I mean, look at it. It's an engine built entirely out of living cells inside the game, and its only job is to shoot out a brand new glider every 30 turns, forever. This was the first pattern ever found that could grow infinitely. It was the proof that this system's potential was, well, limitless. And here it is, the final incredible leap. It turns out that by arranging these glider guns and other clever patterns, you can build logic gates. You know, the fundamental and, or, and not gates that are the building blocks of every single computer. And if you can build logic gates, that means your system is what we call Turing complete, which is just a fancy way of saying it can, in theory, compute anything that is computable. It's a universal computer. Conway's original hunch was right all along. His 3 simple rules really could do anything. So, with all of this incredible discovery and fame, you'd think John Conway, the creator, would have absolutely loved the game of life, right? Well, the truth is, his relationship with his most famous creation was, well, it was complicated. For a very long time. For decades, he was pretty vocal about his frustration. He even went so far as to say he hated the game of life. And you can kind of see why. Here's a guy who was a world-class mathematician working on all sorts of other deeply important problems, and he felt like this one simple game was just completely overshadowing everything else he'd ever done. But as the years went on, his feelings started to change. He began to soften. He eventually made peace with its legacy, and he started to admit what a remarkable thing it really was. And in his later years, he finally came around to saying, "Now I'm getting old, I'm quite proud of it." Which is just a beautiful end to that story. And that really leaves us with one last massive thought to chew on. What the game of life proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that you don't need complicated rules to get breathtakingly complex results. All this amazing, lifelike computational behavior can just emerge from the simplest foundation imaginable. And that just has to make you wonder, right? If 3 simple rules can create a universe with infinite potential, what does that say about the rules governing our own?